Hello, everybody. You ready for the robot scientist's daughter?
Yes.
Well, you have to wait a little bit. So I'll start with a little robot music. Make me tonight, make it right. Make me magnificent tonight. Whoa, oh, your hair is beautiful. Oh, tonight, atomic. That's my blondie. So I'll start us off with a poem, the title poem from my book Skin Job, which is about Blade Runner. Post-apocalypse, pre-paradise, you know LA will kill you twice. Slow-mo and screaming. The gynoid kicks like an insect. Tight little doll bride, makeup mannequin. It's the 80s, and that means everybody dies. Nothing that the god of biomechanics would damn you for. Who's God? How about now? Enter the ziggurat, the temple of technogenetics. Twist the spine, Vangelis, and melt like plastic. Shock the monkey, too much slapstick. Progress is in the eye of the Father, but those peepers have burst, no running down his flaccid cheeks. I don't know such stuff, I just do eyes. The machine filing wins. Kelli Russell Agodon is an award-winning poet, writer, editor, and essayist from the Pacific Northwest. She's the author of the award-winning collection of poems, Letters from the Emily Dickinson Room, as well as Small Knots and Geography, and she's co-editor of Fire on Her Tongue, an anthology of contemporary women's poetry. Kelli is the co-founder of Two Silvias Press, who also published which one of Jeannine's books?
She Returns to the Floating World.
She Returns to the Floating World. Yeah. Kelli's most recent books are her third collection, Hourglass Museum, along with The Daily Poet, day-by-day prompts for your writing practice. She has a fondness for fedoras, typewriters, and jazz. She loves dessert, but despises cheesecake. Please welcome Kelli Russell Agodon.
Thank you so much. And along with all that, I'm also a really good friend of Jeannine's. And I'm honored to have been asked here to read for this. This is such a big event. Jeannine's been a friend of mine, I can't remember how long, but this book is like a really, really special book. I fell in love with it when she first started writing it, and it's been looking for a really good publisher, and it finally found the perfect home. So our writing group is so proud, and I'm just so honored to be reading for her and that she asked me. And I've never been like an opening act, so I'm going to try my best to open and kind of ease in, but you know, the song, you made it easy for me. That was a good way to start. So I don't write about robots, but I do write about the universe. And I do write about black bras. And sometimes the universe and black bras come together. And this poem was inspired by, I was reading an article on black holes. And there was a Victoria's Secret catalog on my desk. And so I started thinking about black bras and black holes. And I thought, well, what would happen if I put those together in a poem? And so I did. It's called What the Universe Makes of Lingerie. It's impossible to see the black bra directly, as no light can escape from it. Still, there are supernovas, dark matter, meteorites in its path. The black bra understands its usefulness is overrated. It's problematic under a white shirt of a white woman, unprofessional peeking out of a blazer. To see observational evidence of black bras, you do not need to borrow the Hubble telescope to view the Hourglass Nebula. Their existence is well supported. A gravitational field so strong, nothing can escape. Black bras can be found in the back of a Vega, between the vinyl seats. It is the star the boy wishes on. He is never the master of the unhook, Orion unfastening his constellation belt. Let it remain a mystery, something almost seen, almost touched in a galaxy. I'd call it rocket-worthy, but there is cosmic censorship, naked singularities to consider. The black bra has electric charge. Too close to the event horizon, a man disappears in its loophole. Escape velocity equal to the speed of light. So that was something old. So I thought I would do something new because Jeannine writes a lot about foxes, and I write a lot about coyotes or coyotes, however you choose to say it. And we were talking, this collection, Jeannine has, as you know, has a lot of humor in her work. And there is humor in this, but it's more darker. It's a little more, it's a very poignant. And it's a powerful book. So I'm going to read something that's a little poignant, a little darker, but hopefully you can think of foxes when I say coyotes. It's called 24-Hour News Waltz with Coyotes and Religion. This morning, religion is a jar of paper whites, leaning off the counter, and I am the paper heart, leaning out the window, searching for meaning in the coyotes and the baby coyotes roaming my yard. Right now, I pray the neighbors have kept their cat in, that the small rabbit that lives in my hedge smells the scent of canine, the scent of blood from the young fawn they caught earlier this morning, and stays hidden. Here is my life between NPR and the killings outside my window, between school shootings and watching a sparrow picked off by a peregrine falcon. All of it has me talking to God a lot more and telling her there's only so much loss I can handle. But God laughs, almost howls, then whispers, "That's why I sent the coyote pups into your yard. Look closer, there's life everywhere." I've had a trouble with the whole circle of life thing. I don't watch those channels. My daughter covers my eyes when the zebra's running. So I'm going to end, and then there'll be another poem, and then we're going to get the superstar of the evening, and you're going to have the best reading. But I'm going to end with kind of a celebration of life poem, and it's called Love Waltz with Fireworks. 17 minutes ago, I was in love with the cashier and a cinnamon pull-apart. 17 minutes before that, it was a gray-haired man in Argyle socks, a woman dancing outside the bakery holding a cigarette and broken umbrella. The rain. I've fallen in love with it many times. The fog, the frost, how it covers the clovers, and by clovers I mean lovers. And now I'm thinking how much I want to rush up to the stranger in the plaid wool hat and tell him how much I love his eyes. All those fireworks, every 17 minutes exploding in my head. You the baker, you the novelist, you the reader, you the homeless man on the corner with the strong hands. I've thought about you. But in this world, we've been taught to keep our emotions tight. A rubber band ball, we worry if one band loosens, the others will begin shooting off in so many directions. So we quiet. I quiet. I eat my cinnamon bread in the bakery, watching the old man still sitting at his table, moving his napkin as he drinks a small cup of coffee. And I never say, I think you're beautiful, except in my head, except I decide I can't live this way, and walk over to him, place my hand on his shoulder, lean in close and whisper, I love your Argyle socks. And he grabs my hand, the way a memory holds tight in the smallest corner. He smiles and says, I always hope someone will notice. Oh. Thank
Not what teachers said to do, making dreams come true, living tissue, warm flesh, weird science. So my last poem for the evening is an ode to Joanna Everhart, who is the protagonist of The Stepford Wives, played by Catherine Ross in 1975. A daylight thriller. Not many bodices left to rip. This is all so silly. It's just my head. Such pretty little homes, ticky-tacky little hats and gloves. It wasn't my fault. I didn't see it coming. This is all so silly. It's just my head. Tomboy Bobby is a manic rash. No one to talk to but the camera. Stepford isn't known for its repartee. I just want to look like a woman. Stop by any time. I'll be here. All so silly. Get the inflection just right. Tied off by your own doppelganger, but with deeper cleavage. Forced to apologize every time I get smashed. Silly. God knows he's given me things. The man in the ice cream suit has a recipe you simply must attempt. Eat, not too much. When I cut myself, I bleed. Put my head in the oven. Also silly, it's just my head, my hands, my throat, myself. Here's the bio that Jeannine gave me. Jeannine Hall Gailey recently served as the second Poet Laureate of Redmond, Washington. She is the author of 4 books of poetry, Becoming the Villainous, She Returns to the Floating World, Unexplained Fevers, and now The Robot Scientist's Daughter. Her work has been featured on NPR's The Writer's Almanac, Verse Daily, and in the year's Best Fantasy and Horror, only poem that year, by the way. Her poems have appeared in the American Poetry Review, the Iowa Review, and Prairie Schooner. She reviews poetry for the Rumpus. So my bio for Jeannine is that Jeannine is amazing. Jeannine is really a poetry superhero. She goes to book fairs with Glenn, her husband, and they bring little bottles of water to the people who are stuck behind the tables. They're like these Christian superheroes. I love them, you know? I just think they're wonderful. And Jeannine's just one of my favorite local writers, and such a bright star, here in Seattle. So I'll leave it to Jeannine to show you what I'm talking about. Please welcome Jeannine Hall Gailey.
Well, thank you guys for being. I want to thank you first of all because it's such a gorgeous night outside. It's just like crazy April weather here, and because so many of you are good friends. I have friends here in the audience from high school, and my parents who flew here from Ohio, and my little brother and his wife just got back from Thailand, so we're just so happy. And there are a bunch of people in the audience. I worked with them on their books, and now their books are out. So I'm very excited. It's just very, anyway, it's all very exciting. It's all very sincere and very exciting, and I feel the warm fuzzies. But here's my official thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thanks especially to Kelli and Evan. Those guys make a party wherever they go. So that's thanks so much to Jack Straw for hosting us, and Poets and Writers. They provided a grant to make tonight possible. And thanks, of course, to my family for being here from such a long distance. And thanks to Glenn, my husband, who not only helped set up, also helped sell books, and he baked the gluten-free cupcakes with robots on them that we'll have at the end. So he's really quite amazing. I wanted to thank also, I've been working on this book for some years, and the members of my writing group that I think we've been with now, Kelli, has it been 13? Yeah. 13 years? 13 years. 13 years. So, little group that's met on Bainbridge Island in Kingston. It's Kelli Agodon, Lana Ayers, Natasha Money, Annette Spalding-Convey, Janet Knox, Holly Hughes, Rhonda Burlach, and Jennifer Lawrence. So this book is dedicated to my father, who's in the front row holding the camera. That's the robot scientist. But it's really, it's a fictionalized and realistic. So it's sort of some memoir and some sci-fi and some different things. It's about growing up in America's secret city. So out here we have Hanford, but where I grew up, it was Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is its sister son. It was called the Atomic City, America's Secret City. So I talk a little bit in these poems about atomic history, some sci-fi tropes about robots, including Blade Runner, which Evan was already giving a little shout out to, and some other like pop culture references to scientists and their daughters, because that was a really big trope. There were these 50s movies about mad scientists and their daughters, so anyway, some stuff about that. Can you guys hear me in the back? More volume? So this is the first poem called Cesium Burns Blue, and cesium is one of the contaminants from nuclear radiation. It's one of the big ones in Fukushima. It was also in Oak Ridge. Cesium burns blue. Copper burns green. Sodium yellow. Strontium red. Watch the flaming lights that blaze across your skies, America. There are burning satellites even now being swallowed by your horizon. The detritus of space programs long defunct, the hollowed masterpieces of dead scientists. Someone is lying on a grassy hill, counting shooting stars, wondering what happens when they hit the ground. In my backyard at Oak Ridge, they lit cesium to measure the glow. Hold it in your hand, foxfire, wormwood, glowworm. Cesium lights the rain, absorbed in the skin, unstable, unstable, dancing away, ticking away in bones, fingernails, brain. Sick, burns through, burns blue. So, that's a science poem. Sometimes I write them. So, and the next poem is kind of a little more humorous. So I have a series of poems in this book that are realistic, and then some that are called The Robot Scientist's Daughter, whatever. And these are kind of the more sci-fi ones. So this is called The Robot Scientist's Daughter, Polonium-210. The robot scientist's daughter is a tightly controlled molecule. Sometimes she threatens to explode into antimatter, to shatter the equilibrium. Other times she teeters at the edge of decay, a half-life of skin and soul. Shake her, if you will, don't stand too close. She is so radioactive, her half-life is short. She is extremely unstable. She is toxic. Inhalation, consumption can lead to death. She is considered fairly volatile. She can be contained within paper. She glows bright blue. She is a showstopper. So, one of the poems I wrote got made into a piece of art by a glass artist named Carol Morland. She's not here tonight, but she made me a glass snowman. Those who do a radioactive snowman. And this was the poem that she got that inspiration from. Lessons in Poison, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Oh, there's a little note I have. A hot particle is a small, highly radioactive object. It's something they use to measure radioactivity, blah, 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 radionuclides. Okay. Lessons in Poison, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. She learned early to tell poison plants because she liked to eat things in the yard. Wild onion, grass, green apples. To tell the fronds of Queen Anne's lace from wild carrot. The snakeberry from the strawberry. Sassafras from poison oak. that the prettiest mushrooms were also the most toxic, that lily of the valley and foxglove, though dainty, were deadly. But she didn't learn then. The frog, the mud dauber wasp, the milk from cows, the white-tailed deer, the catfish were full of hot particles, though her father brought out the Geiger counter to measure her snowman, to teach her the snow, too, wasn't safe to taste. So, you really did have a Geiger thing. This is called the Robot Scientist Daughter, One of Us. There was something wrong with her. That much was clear. She ran around in circles, meowing or mooing, the yellow jackets a cloud in the sun. Men in black suits hovered in doorways, dodging shadows. A safe kept locked all times in her house. The basement glowed and ticked, and the children there emerged damaged. The furniture was cracked and pasted back together. Even the flowers in their blooms knew soon they would be plowed under, left as rubble. What chance did she have even then to know her future was already written, her roots stunted and sick like those dogwoods with their grafted limbs? Someone kept stealing their dogs. Cars arrived in the night and disappeared again before morning. Even though their strawberries were so sweet, even though their daffodils nodded cheerfully to us, we could see she would never be one of us. So this one, I don't know if you guys, how many of you guys remember the 70s? I think it's a lot of people. Sometimes I read these poems and I'm like, okay, nobody here remembers the 70s, so that's fine. That's good. But back then there was like a big survivalism movement, right? Oil was burning up, there was no more oil, everybody's going to live off the land, blah, blah, blah. So our grandparents kept mailing us these Foxfire books, if you guys are familiar with this. This is called the Foxfire books. In case of emergency, learn to make glass. I remember burning acorns in the ground. Nuclear bombs built next door hovered over us like sinister black hives. It seemed natural that every day might be my last. Nevertheless, there were violets to pick from the moss by the oaks. There were dogs and horses to lie next to, strawberries to be gathered and smothered with sugar. Each long sunbeam had its own message from God, I was sure, hiding amid death smotes. I learned the names of crawling creatures trapped, petrified in limestone rocks. I crawled inside abandoned bear caves for shelter. I tried to quiet my feet on the forest floor. In case of poisoning, eat this. In case of war, hide underground. I learned to purify water, to name edible leaves, in case, in case, in case. It seemed as if the trees themselves were living in light for me, as if I might lead people to safety. I remember folding white sheets next to a Geiger counter. Oil reserves burning up. It was the 70s. My grandparents sent books of Appalachian rituals like sassafras tea, planting peas by the moon, sowing up the land. It seemed natural then that our woods would grow glowing mushrooms, that it was the fire foxes, and we were sure it could be appeased. So later they found out sassafras tea is really bad for you, like it causes cancer and stuff. So. And I'm like, it's a huge health tonic. It's great. That's the 70s for you. Everybody was smoking and driving in pickup trucks. So this one is called Robot Scientist Daughter, Medical Wonder. The robot scientist's daughter was a bit confused. She started down a road to medical wonder, sat under the machine's lights, but then tiptoed on a paper trail, looking for an island of cranes. She made 1,000 wishes. Still, she shed a blue glow, and everyone said how sickly. Her nails made of plastic and paper mache, her heart's thump-thump 3 times fast. Her one kidney curled inside her ribs, her blood trying to escape. Father, she screamed, but he couldn't save her. The robot scientist's daughter knew what she had to do. With her own 2 hands, she built a new body, one that worked better this time, shiny and smooth and silver as mirrored glass. After all, she'd been trained. It was no less than was expected. She crawled inside and adjusted the fit. This time, there will be no stopping her. The curves are all impenetrable, and the precision of each drum kit beat keeps her in line. She's a soldier, a savior, a ship to bear prisoners into space. I did not wear a robot costume today. Makes me a little sad. But I did wear robot shoes. Now, we're having a little reception afterwards out front, and we have like Prosecco, but strawberries were my big thing, because I had strawberries in my poems like 15 times in this book. Oh, also, I don't have a copy of my book to hold up. Should I hold up? Yeah, something. All right. Anyway, it's out front. And this one it's the most personal book. So the other books I've written are kind of about superheroes and Japanese anime and fairy tales and those kind of things. This one is kind of my most personal book. And I really do care about these environmental issues, but I try not to be, you try not to be too, dramatic or whatever, but this, I found an article from 1964 Time, and the headline was Hot Wasp Nest. And this article was like amazingly positive about how they were measuring these radioactive wasp nests right like where I used to live. And it was like they had found an abandoned shack, and the whole shack had been filled in by mud dauber wasps, which brought in this radioactive mud. So the whole house was like pretty horrifying. But the upbeat article too was like so off-putting. So that's how this next poem got written. And they had the same problem with rabbits at Hanford. I don't know if you guys have seen the news, but the little rabbits escape and then their droppings are radioactive, and they can't catch the rabbits because men are bad at catching rabbits. It's hard to catch rabbits. Anyway. Hot wasp nest. Slick with mud, their buzz punctuated afternoons, spent building nests that poisoned their young, filling abandoned houses with the tick of radioactive dirt. Poor wings, poor feet, unequipped but ambitious. You didn't know the dosimeter, containment procedure, only the horror of transfer, of architecture. Swallows too, daubing the mud on nests, surely too fragile to protect the chicks inside their eggs. The scientists were following you as well, to watch the spread of radionuclides project the radius of your flight. Oh frog, oh catfish, oh white-tailed deer, oh invertebrate, oh poisoned ears, burn off, carry away, burrow underground. So that's super cheerful, right? That's right. I've got some funny stuff in here. I just haven't gotten to it yet, I swear. Like at least 2 poems are funny. Like 50. So, This is called The Robot Scientist's Daughter Escape. The robot scientist's daughter was an escape artist. She'd watched her father x-ray roses and peonies. She knew the ins and outs of the genome. Each city collapsed under her gaze. Ice storms in the desert, drought among the bananas. The newspapers blared the news, but she was already gone. Sometimes she brought souvenirs. A cafe from Cuba plunked down near Sweden, a spun sugar swan at the seaside. But no one understood the apparitions. She loved shadow puppets. Her hands became doves, cranes, foxes. But these were messages. Inside, she itched to be set free. She ran in caves underground. She thought the green glow was the same, that somehow the crickets could communicate. The stalactites soothed her skin. On the tops of mountains, she communed with planets, swinging the Earth dangerously close to sunspots, knocking comets out of orbit. She thought when she sang the seals could understand with their soft eyes, unwieldy bodies. She swam in the sea in black current and red tide. She thought she might be a mermaid with her seaweed hair and strange flavored lungs. She sang and sang, but no one heard. There was a rattling of undersea earthquakes. She might move the moon closer for company. So, there's a couple of poems in here about Fukushima, but one of the weird things about that tsunami was that there was a supermoon. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a supermoon that night. The moon was supposed to be slightly closer. I just thought that was very cosmic and strange. This next poem was inspired by a set of photographs that Sky Ed Westcott did for the Atlantic about the women who worked at Oak Ridge and labs in 1945. So there's some amazing photographs. So this is called The Women of America's Secret City in 1945. Seated politely in plaid skirts and hot rolled hair at the controls of Calutrons, having been warned by a billboard on the way to work, what you see here stays here, are told they have helped America win the war. They are not yet concerned about uranium, the Semestos walls of their assigned rental homes, the effects on their skinny children selling comic books of Atomic Man for 5 cents on the side of the road. A generation later, my father would walk these same buildings with dosimeters talk to dying janitors, build robots who might spare their lives, design concrete caps to protect us from decay. The women he worked with every day were friendly, contained, like the particles under the K25 and Y12. My childhood of barbed wire and warning signs at fishing holes, the simmer of 70s protest versus patriotism, had none of that obedient beauty. The horn-rimmed chemists and physicists, unquestioning and sensible heels, the yearly X-ray, the uranium taped to their wrists. That's a real thing. There was a memoir I read of a safety physicist from Oak Ridge back during World War II, and they taped uranium to the working women's wrists to see how it would affect their skin. So, needless to say, they did not know then the detrimental effects of that, but always kind of scary. All right, so this one has a couple of call-outs. One is to Blade Runner. One is to Cinnamon Watch Mystery Science 3000. Okay, so I'm a huge nerd. I've added myself, but you probably knew that already if you know me. So there was this great one called Killer Shrews, where the mad scientist and his daughter live on this island with these giant shrews, but the shrews are actually dogs in costumes, not scary at all. It's terrific cinema. Oh, and the hero is the guy from, what is that? Dukes of Hazzard. Remember the sheriff?
Oh,
You guys should see it. The robot scientist's daughter in film. The robot scientist's daughter is always beautiful in film, in a neat blonde upto and 50s-style dress. She helps the hero escape, leads him off the island or planet, gives him the code to shut down the robots before they take over the world. The robot scientist's daughter carefully holds on to secrets about her father at the dinner table. She's demure, but she knows her way around a gun rack or a test tube. She sneaks out to rescue prisoners after her father has a few drinks. The robot scientist's daughter must be there to humanize the robot scientist. He is both the protagonist we identify with and the villain we know must fall. If he had no daughter, the camera would have no way to enter his laboratory with sympathetic eye. Sometimes the robot scientist's daughter pretends to be a robot herself, handing out food efficiently without smudging her makeup. Sometimes she turns out to be a robot all along, implanted with heartwarming but false memories. Sometimes she has a telepathic link to genetically engineered dinosaurs. When she was a child, she had only robots to play with, mostly hide and seek and chess. This both helped and hurt her socialization. The robot scientist might be named Morbius, while his daughter is named Susan. She will be the downfall, the island crumbling, scientists buried beneath rubble, killer shrews loosed upon the world. It's my tribute to killer shrews right there. See, so few killer shrew poems for them. So let's see, I've got a couple more poems. You guys up for a few more?
Oh, yeah.
All right. The robot scientist's daughter brushes with death. The robot scientist's daughter drowned when she was 3. Her brother was stung to death by wasps. She died in her sickbed of scarlet fever, and all her toys and books were burned. The robot scientist's daughter has become a specter. She haunts children's hospital wards, plays ball with the children, and hangs their bright pictures on the wall. She is careful with their IV lines, with their thin, fragile skulls. The robot scientist's daughter spent all of college with pneumonia, coughing on her exam papers. She haunts the dorms, pulling fire alarms, shuffling the carefully stacked pages of the study groups. She died during a routine operation, bled to death on the table. The hospital lacked facilities for transfusion. Now she's a white-faced ghost in an ill-fitting gown, her feet still in pink slipper socks. The robot scientist's daughter is amazed she's made it this far. So many brushes with death. That German Shepherd attack in France where she jumped into a river, the skittering puddle jumper lurching over turbulent Kentucky air. If she is a ghost, she has no memory. She takes photographs to remember her home. Images dissolve around her. First, she is holding a television remote, a copy of Cosmo, her mother's textbooks, the curve of her boy's neck. The whisper of the afterlife is nothing but frost on a window. Her secrets will die locked inside her chest, her bones brittle fragments spelling out her mistakes. Find her among fossils. A lot of fossils in Tennessee. I think that keeps me up for a reason. All right, 3 more poems. The next 2 are for Fukushima. I have friends who live out in Japan who have translated some of this work for an anthology out there called, I think the English translation is Against Nuclear Power for Renewable Energy. It's like this long in English, but it's a Japanese anthology, and so that was really nice to be able to do something there. But it's still pretty horrifying when I still hear the news about it. Basically, they haven't been able to really fix that area at all. So anyway, this is called Morning of Sunflowers for Fukushima. Oh, I should mention, so they got this idea to plant sunflowers because they're able to leach cesium out of the ground. The Ukraine did it too. But the problem is those sunflowers then have the radioactive contamination, and you can't get rid of the dead sunflowers. Anyway, a morning of sunflowers for Fukushima. 200,000 sunflowers drink cesium from the grounds of the temple where they burn lanterns made from the names of the dead. This invisible snow, says the temple's monk, brings us a long winter. A village woman mourns the loss of her blueberries. In Chernobyl, they grew amaranthus, field mustard, sunflowers, but how to dispose of poison flowers in spring. We build lanterns, we plant seeds, we set things alight. We like light, that's very. So this is a follow-up to that. Well, of course, they planted all these sunflowers, then it didn't work. But that temple monk still wanted to keep the sunflowers there, so. Fukushima in fall. A field of sunflowers grow where rice should stand, to draw cesium from the ground. The water lilies bloom after years of lying dormant. Something here about the resilience of earth, about renewal, something hopeful in the faces of those yellow sunflowers turning towards the last beams of light. Children hesitate before tasting plum jam, before sipping tea. How can they know what is offered? And everybody says, safe. Metal faces of new radiation detection signs appear next to crumpled, worn idols of stone. Sunflowers planted in hope and the names of the dead fail to purify the earth, say scientists in September. Still, they are tended. They stand guard with origami cranes left on the beaches to be carried away with the tide. As winter approaches, many roofs still carry the crushed bodies of cars. As people try to repair, rebuild, children's thyroids tested and scanned. Strontium, cesium, iodine in the soil, in the fish, the fowl, the fruit, in the flowers burning in the fields, aglow against the late setting sun. So this is the last poem. I hope you've enjoyed the book, or this little excerpt from the book anyway. And afterwards we'll have this party thing going on, lots of liquor, a tiny bit of liquor, cupcakes, stuff. So this is called, thank you once again for being with us. Thank you for coming in. Interpreting Signs in Appalachia. In this story, a girl grows up in a field of nuclear reactors, surrounded by abnormal blooms, pea shoots and peonies. She learns to ride ponies, goes barefoot in treacherous grass. Sickly, she dreams in the arms of apple trees, spits out their green pits. It's likely her thyroid grew to the size of a poisoned apple, that her blood ran hot, that her hair grew long with trace myrtles. It's likely you won't find her happy ending here, sewn into the silent concrete. Look to the swallows. They carry their mythic toxins into the walls of their nests, tucked into nooks, hidden between stones. Search for clues to the mystery. Follow the green light of foxfire into the sides of mountains beneath silos. Listen for the crackle underground. Thank you very much. These guys have books for sale as well. My husband's out there selling and feeding people. That's very helpful. Oh, and thanks to John and Christine who came here from Open Books. My favorite. So thanks again.